Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here today with yet another IEM review for y'all. This time we're going to be taking a look at something cooked up by our old pal Zeos. This here is the Juzear X Z-Refuse Defiant, a brand new $100 hybrid IEM from Juzear in collaboration with Zeos Pantera. Now, Juzear is a brand that I actually have very little experience with. I've really only ever heard the Clear before this. But Zeos and Juzear are entering a very, very competitive price bracket at $100. Does the Defiant do enough to stand out amongst the competition? Let's figure that out. Today's disclaimer is a bit more interesting than usual. This particular Defiant I bought for myself for review. Right around the time I was waiting for this to arrive, however, HiFiFo reached out and said, hey, would you like to review the Defiant? So now I have two of them. This one's completely sealed. It is the green one. So now that I have two of them, I have to let you know, as usual, I'm not being paid for this review, but because I could turn around and sell these if I wanted to, I've gone ahead and activated the paid promotion feature here on YouTube. I do these disclaimers because I believe in full transparency when there's potential bias besides my own personal taste at play. Thank you so much for HiFiFo to sending me this one. I'm sure I'll figure out something fun to do with this. But until then, a huge thank you to all of you watching, and thank you all very much for your continued support. As someone who watches Zeos every once in a while, I know he cares about the included accessories for IEMs quite a bit. It's not really a surprise then that the packaging here on the Defiant is pretty good. In addition to the IEMs and the cable, you get a standard Juzear like leather carry case, features a soft inner lining to not scratch the IEMs, as well as a mesh pouch to put ear tips or a dongle or something. Pretty good overall. The zipper is smooth. I do have a little bit of artifacting from when this was sewed on at the factory, but overall it's nice and crush resistant, so it should survive at the bottom of the backpack nicely. You also get a 4.4mm connector for the modular cable. You get a cleaning cloth. You get a Zeos themed acrylic stand, which we quite like. And you get a selection of ear tips. You get these clear silicone tips. They're a soft inner bore, standard bore as well. The black tips are also silicone, but the core, the red core there, are much more solid. You also get a single pair of foams in a medium size, which Zeos would say don't fit him. Overall, I feel like the packaging is solid. This is a better accessories package at $100 than some IEMs in the $200+ range, especially considering you do get a modular cable here. So well done, Juzear. Good job, Zeos. Let's take a closer look at that cable. This cable is nice, and it is being sold separately by Juzear and Zeos for $40 US. Continuing his tradition of naming things after anime characters, this is what they call the flare cable. It is a 2-wire twist consisting of these blue and red wires inside each individual wire. It's quite nice. There's no memory, no microphonics. It doesn't feel super rubbery in the hands either, which is nice. The hardware, as you can see, is all matching brushed aluminum. The Y-split has no branding on it, but the 3.5mm modular connector does have Juzear branded on it. The modular connection style is my preferred screw-on connectors, which I'll know that I like. In this case, it also provides a bit of a handhold to get the cable out of more stubborn amps. The chin slider is very loosey-goosey. It can let go if you're doing a bit more strenuous walking or running, but generally, if you put a decent amount of pressure on it, it will hold its place quite nicely. The 2-pin connectors are clearly labeled right and left. I do wish that that little ring here was filled in with red and blue just to make it a little bit clearer. But overall, I think this is a great little cable. I understand why they're selling it separately. I think $40 separately for this cable is kind of nice, especially considering that it is modular. So yeah. Let's get a closer look at the shells. The Defiant itself here is a pretty standard build for an IEM at this price. You get full 3D printed resin shells with metal nozzles glued onto the end. These nozzles feature a metal mesh over the end to protect the drivers and appear to be glued in. As you can see, there is zero ventilation on the inside of these shells. I do think there's most likely a base bypass tube in here for the rear volume, as I didn't get any driver flex. And the entire rear volume is connected to this rather large vent on the sort of inside here by the 2-pin connector. That said, I did experience pressure buildup issues with these while doing my testing. It was inconsistent in that it would be one ear and then the other and then the other ear. It happened often enough that it got really annoying. I'll talk a little bit more about that in my comfort section, however. The left IEM features the Juzear branding here. The right IEM has the Zeos logo, which is pretty nice. The faceplate is resin and comes in two colors. There's this mother of pearl and the green that I showed you earlier. I can't really make out any flaws in the construction or in the resin here. I think it's generally pretty solidly built, and it should be about as durable as other 3D printed resin IEMs in this price range. Alrighty, so let's take a peek under the hood and see what makes the Defiant tick. She's powered by 4 drivers, a 10mm polyurethane dynamic driver, and 3 custom BAs. This combo is actually super easy to drive. It means you shouldn't need to go out and buy a dongle or use a specific amp for these. The overall weight, thanks to being all resin, is nice and light, and the nozzles aren't too wide at 6.2mm at their widest point. Both of those things together should bode well for comfort, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Since the Defiant features a crossover network for those drivers, the sound does change a bit when exposed to impedance adapters or higher impedance sources, but again, we'll talk more about that later. Overall, in terms of specifications, the Defiant isn't too out of the box for like a typical hybrid set, which I think is a good thing, and no need to reinvent the wheel here. As we get into the cool wall, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the other design here so you can take a look at them. There's these sort of green jade shells and these sort of rainbowy mother of pearl shells. Personally speaking, I much prefer the mother of pearl look here. Not only does it look better sort of by itself, but it also matches the flare cable absolutely beautifully. You got the same sort of purpley blue and red going on in there. I love it when IEMs and cables synergize in terms of looks, and this does it very well. I like the metal bird on there. I like the Z Reviews logo here on the side. The Juzear logo is not as exciting as the metal bird, but overall, it looks pretty good. You know, I'm a big fan of Mother of Pearl. I like the cable, like the synergy. I think it all works together to add up to give these a sub-0 score on the cool wall. I really do love the looks on these. If I was grading the green ones, I think they would have gone in cool, but Mother of Pearl, 100% sub-0. I have high hopes for the Defiant, for the Council of Ladies. As I said last time, the ladies' tastes in jewelry does vary, but most of them seem to like Mother of Pearl, so let's see what they think of the Defiant. First off, do they want the Jade or the Mother of Pearl? And it's a clean sweep for the Mother of Pearl / rainbow shells. I feel pretty vindicated right now. Now, are these pretty? And finally, we have a positive result. Well done, Juzear. 4-1 in favor of pretty. Lady number 4 living up to her reputation here. Yeah, I have a general idea of how the compliments are going to go. Yep, another 4-1. So congratulations, Zeos. The Defiant joins the illustrious Gate Kept by Lady number 4 club, a illustrious group. Finally, let's go ahead and look at their thoughts. Lots of love for both the colorways here, so both of the designs are clearly winners. Lady number 4 would like to make it very clear that she dislikes both colors equally, which honestly for her is par for the course. But that's why we love her. Not just anything gets her seal of approval here. Moving on to comfort. The Defiant shells are a sort of mildly semi-custom design. You've got a very small comfort bulge going on here, a tiny little comfort wing, a slight indent here. Just north of the non-traditional IEM shape is what I would say. While the shells aren't massive, they're not, super small either. None of this was a worry for me in terms of comfort. The only thing stopping me from wearing this for long periods of time was that really annoying pressure buildup issue. It was really annoying. It made me take breaks from listening more often than I would like, and it was just not ideal for me and my ears. The smaller nozzles combined with the lightweight is basically a recipe for success as far as I'm concerned. If it hadn't been for that, these probably would have done really well. For my wife, however, things weren't so easy. While she was able to form a seal with these, it failed almost immediately, earning these a score of bad on the tiny ear test. The shells are simply too large for her ears, and the small bulges and contours don't fit her ears super well. As with most sort of semi-custom shells, even milder shaped ones like this, I will say what I usually say, which is try these before you buy them. But let's go ahead and get started with how the Defiant sounds, kicking things off with the bass. We all know Zeos loves his bass, and you can tell by the Defiant here. It features a nice, satisfying bass boost with good rumble and a real solid punch. The original instrumental mix of Deadmau5's Ghosts and Stuff has great thumpiness and punch to the replay, with the lower, buzzier bass notes having really good rumble and nice texture. Replay is overall good, nothing on the low end felt lacking to me. Bass guitars and kick drums are also quite nice. The funky 1970s cop show bass line in Jiro Inagaki's Painted Paradise, again, had really nice texture to it. You can hear the sort of buzzing, ringing of the strings into the pickups and the low notes, and the bass guitar didn't lose its presence as the rest of the track got going. Bass here, I think, is very well done. I think it could have maybe used a little bit more mid-bass, but Zeos mentioned that he wanted these to sound expensive, hence why I think he went for a more controlled mid-bass presentation here. Thanks to that more controlled mid-bass, the lower mids are clean, but tonally unbothered. I do feel that they have enough energy that they don't come off overly lean or thin sounding. Luis Miguel's Suave can sound a little bit thin on sets that have too much of a mid-bass tuck or really lower mids energy. That is not the case here on the Defiant. This song replays great here. Just enough energy to give the horns and Luis's vocals some body. Good work, Zeos, honestly. Female vocals, I think, are also very well done. They're forward without being super emphasized. They don't come across as nasal or husky. Trisale's Adrenaline sounds, for lack of a better word, fun on the Defiant. Sora Amamiya and crew, all of their vocals sound tonally correct. Their voices sort of rise above the instrumentation without getting too far up there or masking any of the great horns, drums, and guitars on this track. The replay just comes across as well balanced, which honestly describes the rest of the mid-range very well. There is coloration here. It makes the mids sound fun, but not tonally compromised, which I think, again, is nice work. Crucially, however, Zeos has not overcooked the upper mids and the treble. The upper mids are boosted to the point where they can give vocals some of that depth and presence that I like, but not to the point where they get shouty, sibilant, or annoying. Madonna's breathy exclamations in Material Girl, for example, have great energy to them. The harmonics they throw off cut through the instrumentation well, but they're not painful on the eardrum like they can be on some brighter tuned sets. Defiant also does very well with percussion and instrument harmonics. I've mentioned the electronic drums in Falco's Vienna Calling before, but on the Defiant, they're very well realized without being fatiguing. The decay and the attack are nice and crisp. The wash is natural. I do wish that there was a little bit more airiness here at the top end, just give it that more expensive sound, but honestly, I think it's very nice overall. The upper mids and treble are well done. I think Zeos did a good job here. The technical performance of the Defiant is great, but nothing's overall astounding. Christmas Time Is Here by the Vince Guaraldi Trio sounds great on the Defiant. You have Fred Marshall's bass in the right ear. All his strings have nice ringing. You can feel the good finger texture on them. The depth to the sound is really nice. You get slight buzzing on some notes. It's just a really nice replay in terms of those small little details in the bass. As far as my standard Waltz for Debbie test goes, the Defiant did okay. It did better with the background conversation than with some of the more subtle glassware noises. I would say, while the Defiant didn't blow me away in terms of overall technical performance and detail resolution, I found that it was mostly in line with the other sets in and around this price range. I would put it about equal with the AFUL Explorer in terms of overall technical performance, but behind something like the Supermix 4, for example. Stereo separation and perceived 3D soundstage is another one of Zeos's, I love this, so I'm not surprised to find that it's pretty good here on the Defiant. The entire Friday Night in San Francisco album replays excellently, with all three guitarists located sort of where they should be along the stage, and the audience filling in the space nicely around them. You even get some room effects on this replay, which is good. The perceived 3D soundstage on this set is also very nice. Hiroshima's Sancai and its very busy, complex sort of fusion instrumentation sounds very wide and nicely deep on the Defiant. The imaging lets me pick out where the koto, the shamisen, the taiko drums, and the guitars live in the mix quite easily. While it isn't the widest or most expansive soundstage that I've heard at this price point, it is a good bit above average, and it's in the top echelon sort of at this price range for sure. As usual with IEMs that change their sound with impedance adapters, let's discuss that before we jump into the comparisons. We'll go ahead and pull up the graph. The changes on the Defiant are minor, but they are present. This is one of the reasons I was saying that you're safe plugging these into whatever. You don't need an adapter, you don't need an amp, you don't need a DAC. Even higher output impedance sources will have a relatively minor effect on the Defiant's overall sound profile here. You'll get more bass, a little bit less upper treble, and a little bit less upper mids. I wouldn't say I prefer one sound over the other. If you had an impedance adapter lying around, give it a try and see what you think. It's a minor change, it is noticeable, but it isn't something where I would say, if you're strapped for cash, immediately go out and buy a DAC or a amp with lower output impedance. The sort of affected sound here, if you will, is fine. In terms of tuning then, I personally would describe the Defiant here as sort of a mild V-shaped IEM with maybe like a slight warm tilt to it. It's a very well-balanced IEM, and I think Zeos did something pretty great here. It's not a rare sound signature by any means. It's actually fairly common. It's very popular, and I think Zeos has done well with these drivers at this price with this tuning. I've gathered a few sets in and around this price point, as well as one to do some graph sniffing with. We'll see how this set stacks up versus the competition. First up, we have one of my favorite IEMs in this price range, the smooth and relaxing AFUL Explorer, priced at $120 US. The Explorer here came off to me as a down-tilted version of the Defiant. It's got more bass, it's got richer, warmer lower mids, and then you have reduced upper mids and a more subdued but still detailed, in my opinion, treble presentation. As much as I love the Explorer, one of the more common complaints about it is that it can be a little bit too warm and too dark for some people. If you're one of the people that thought that, honestly, check out the Defiant. It's that little bit brighter, that little bit more energetic in the treble. The bass is a little bit more subdued. And in terms of technical performance, these two, in my tests, were roughly the same. The tuning on the Defiant is maybe a bit more friendly to top-end detail, whereas the tuning on the Explorer is better with low-end detail. Both of these are fantastic. I don't think they straight up compete with one another. If you want something warm and relaxing, grab the Explorer. If you want something more energetic, Defiant is probably for you. Speaking of brighter, let's go ahead and bring in another one of my favorite IEMs at this price point, the venerable Simgot EM6L, known as the Phoenix, priced at $110 US. The Phoenix comes across to me like a more V-shaped version of the Defiant. It's not exactly as rumbly in the sub-bass as the Defiant is, but the lower mids and mid-bass again have that extra warmth that y'all know that I love. The Phoenix, however, does carry a decent bit more energy into those upper mids and treble compared to the Defiant. I personally don't find it fatiguing, but there are people that do. If you are one of those people, the Defiant can be a reasonable, sort of more controlled alternative. I do find it's not quite as resolute or resolving as the EM6L, but it's close enough, and its more forward vocals make it better suited to certain genres like K-pop or J-pop, anything with a female singer, really. Another interesting hybrid in this price range is the Padsmith IEM, priced at $115 US. I described the Padsmith IEM as sort of a hybrid between the EM6L and the Arete. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about both of those today, so I felt like the Padsmith IEM deserved to be in this conversation. It has essentially the same lower mids and mid-bass presentation as the EM6L, meaning that it will be warmer and punchier than the Defiant, but the treble presentation is actually very similar to the Defiant overall. Both are what I would call vocal forward. They both resolve details extremely similarly. If you prefer sub-bass rumble over mid-bass punch and you prefer cleaner lower mids, I would go with the Defiant. If you want punchier mid-bass, warmer lower mids, I would go with the Padsmith IEM. Another thing, if you prefer the way microplanar sound versus balanced armatures, Padsmith is probably your choice. If you don't like microplanars and you prefer balanced armatures, Defiant will probably be your choice. Finally, let's jump up in price and do a bit of graph sniffing. We're going to talk about the Ziigaat X Fresh Reviews Arete, which is currently out on loan, and I couldn't do comparison listening to the Defiant while I had it. So to stand in for it, we're going to use the Lush here while we talk about the graph. So just note, these are not detailed A/B listening notes like with the rest of them. This is pure graph sniffing and going off of my notes of listening to the Arete and my notes of listening to the Defiant separately. So, yeah, look at the graph. The Defiant sort of graphs like a baby Arete, and if my notes are any indication, that's kind of sort of what it is. In ear, the Defiant, I think, is more dynamic in the bass. The Arete is more resolute, more resolving, has better imaging. The Defiant didn't pack that sort of soundstage wow that I got on the Arete. But, you know, overall, they're very close. I will say I prefer the air on the Arete compared to the Defiant. My notes, you know, I think the Defiant was missing a little bit of air that the Arete definitely has. Defiant looks like it would come pretty close to the Arete sound signature, and it is less than half the price, and it honestly comes with nicer accessories, so that's something else to consider here. If you're looking for sort of a budget alternative to the Arete, check out the Defiant here. So we'll go ahead and do our usual wrap-up, but let me mention real quick that the Defiant is the only IEM on this table that has a modular cable in the package. That's a point in its favor, especially since it's the most affordable set here. It's $15 cheaper than the Phoenix and the Padsmith, 20 bucks cheaper than the Explorer and less than half the price of the Arete. Explorer, in my opinion, the most warm, chilled out, relaxing listening experience on the table. Just a fantastic all-rounder. Y'all know I love the Explorer. It can be lacking in treble energy for some people. The Phoenix is brighter than the Defiant. It's got punchier mid-bass, overall the more resolute and resolving set, but it can be fatiguing for some listeners. Padsmith IEM, again, very similar to the Phoenix in the sort of mid-bass and lower mids region. But the treble presentation is very similar to the Defiant. Again, for me, it's going to be, do you want microplanar or balanced armature tonality? Pick whichever one you prefer. And also, this is more mid-bass focused. This is more sub-bass focused. Finally, the Arete, again, graph-sniffing opinion, comes off to me, based on my notes, as a sort of grown-up version of the Defiant with a more elegant treble presentation, but less dynamic bass. This is a case where I really like all the IEMs on the table. Pretend this is the Arete. And I think this comparison section and how I talk about all these things should give you a pretty good impression of how much I like the Defiant here. But before I get ahead of myself, let's go ahead and pull up the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale and figure out just how high the Juzear x Zeos Defiant can climb. The Defiant is the cheapest IEM that we looked at today, and yet it has the most comprehensive accessories package. The leather case is nice, the cable is modular, its tuning, while not unique, is very well executed. I feel it's very palatable, and it makes for a fantastic all-round listening experience. Honestly, this should go up in you should buy this. There is one thing, however, stopping me from putting it up there, and it is the pressure buildup issues. It was a pretty consistent problem for me during my testing, and it was legitimately disappointing to have to pull these out of my ears to give my ears sort of a rest. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me. I did do a quick search online, looked at some other reviews. I'm not the only one experiencing this. Apparently, it's a more common thing in Juzear IEMs. I haven't experienced anything besides this in the clear, so I did not know that. One thing I will say, I'm not typically sensitive to pressure issues. I think I can count on half of one hand the number of IEMs that I have pressure issues with. So the fact that I can't wear these as long as I would want means that these are going to end up in the this is brilliant tier. It's a real bummer because I feel like Zeos and Juzear cooked up what is an overall excellent package here, considering everything you get. This could be a fantastic one-and-done IEM for 100 bucks if you don't have the pressure buildup issues that I had. So let's get going with the recommendation section because I think there's actually a lot of folks who would really appreciate these. Treble heads and bass heads might want more energy at their respective ends of the scale, and I don't think that people who want a neutral or reference set are going to be looking at this anyway. I mean, it has the Zeos logo on it, so you're not going to expect a reference neutral IEM here anyway. It's also not the top of the heap when it comes to technical performance at a given price. If, however, you're looking for a very well-balanced musical IEM with good technical performance, a great accessories package, and fantastic visual design, the Defiant is pretty awesome. If you're new to IEMs and you have 100 bucks to spend and you're not sure what sort of sound signature you want, you've got a varied library, the Defiant and its sort of fantastic all-round sound signature, I think can be a really good option for a first IEM if you have the money to spend up in this budget. Lastly, I think if you've been eyeing the Ziigaat Arete, you sort of dig the sound signature, you've watched the reviews, you kind of want it, but you just don't have the money to drop 250 bucks on an IEM. Here's sort of a mini Arete, at least based on the graphs and the notes that I took. Less than half the price, better accessories. Can't really go too wrong unless you have the same pressure buildup issues that I did, in which case I would look elsewhere. That's going to be it for this one, and honestly, it's quite bittersweet. I really like the Defiant. Those pressure issues were just really annoying. I tried tips, I tried different insertions, I tried other things that typically resolve pressure buildup issues for me, and it just kept coming back for me. If you don't have those issues, you will probably absolutely adore these. These are a fantastic set of IEMs. Thank you very much to HiFiFo for sending these out for review. Coming up next, we've got the Yangtze Sun Wukong. It's been sitting on the healing bench for quite a while, so stay tuned for that. It's an interesting one for sure. But that's going to do it for now. I want to say thank you very much for watching. Thank you all so much for your continued support. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch y'all next time.